7 siblings, and growing up was really fun because I had amazing grandparents and my mum was just the best mum ever. And my dad was really fun, but as I was getting older, I started to witness a lot of abuse towards my mum. It was really scary, and there were times where I thought he would actually kill her. I did think it was normal because my auntie, who was married to my dad's brother, was also abused as well. I remember when I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old, my mum had made a vegetable curry, and my dad was someone who ate a lot of meat, came home from work, and he said he's not eating that and asked my mum to make something else. My mum refused, and he basically tortured her. I wouldn't even use the word abuse because I think that's a bit of a light word for what I witnessed at the time. I felt very helpless because I tried to help my mum a lot. I was trying to take my dad off her. He'd slapped me and pulled my hair a few times, and I tried to call the police and he broke the phone. My mum's back was broken, she was covered in bruises, there was a lot of blood, and she spent a whole month in bed recovering because he didn't allow her to go to the doctors to get checked. She had a broken nose and a broken back, and she was heavily pregnant. And I was 8 years old at the time, and I just remember thinking that my baby sibling is basically dead. And then when I got to 10 years old, he started to abuse me as well. I always said I want to be a fashion designer or a model because I've always been a little girly girl. My dad started telling me that that's not the route I'm allowed to go down because it's going to bring a lot of shame to the family. Like, I was often called horrible things like a slag from a very young age, like the age of 11. And no matter what choice I made in life, my dad always found a way to shame me from a very young age. And so I remember, I think I was 5 years old and my dad had slapped me because he was abusing my mum, and I swore at him. And I went to school and the teachers had noticed this bruise on my face. I did not think there was any consequences or anything was going to happen because I did think at this point this was normal. So I just openly said, yeah, my dad slapped me. And then social services were called to the school. Because my mum didn't really speak English or have any family in the UK, my dad basically told her that the social services were going to take me and my younger siblings away from her, and we are never going to see our parents again. And my mum could potentially get arrested and go to jail for it too, because the social workers are going to think that my mum and dad are both abusing their children. And because of that, my dad actually persuaded me and my mum to drop the case. And then the abuse carried on. I don't want anyone to ever think I was scared of my dad, because I wasn't. I was hurt by his actions, and I was scared of the consequences that my mum suffered and I suffered and my siblings suffered. So when the topic of me going to Pakistan came up, I was always 10 steps ahead of him. So he told me I was going to Pakistan to take my grandma because we lost our granddad a year before and no one can get the time off work. So I went to school and I noted down my head of year's number and I noted down the police officer's phone number too. And I said, okay, I'll go to Pakistan. So when I landed in Pakistan, I got a phone call from my dad and he was being really nice. And then towards the end of the phone call, he basically said to get comfortable because I'm going to stay in Pakistan till I'm 16 years old and I'm not going to come back home till I'm married. And I called the police and I called my head of year and asked them to get me back to the UK. And they then arranged a meeting with my mum and my dad. By the way, my mum had no idea about this at all, and she was just as shocked and upset as I was. And then luckily 3 months later I was back in the UK. So on the morning of the 24th of September, me and my siblings were woken up by the police. At first it felt like a nightmare and random people are just shouting in my nightmare. And then the police officer actually started knocking on my room door and we were asked to leave the house. I asked where my mum and dad were and the police officer said, I don't know, but you need to leave the house. And about 15 minutes later, the police officer came over and basically said that my mum has passed away and my dad had murdered her in her sleep with a hammer and a knife. And then he left the house, left the door open and called the police and the paramedics and said that he's murdered his wife and that if they could attend the property, because his kids are asleep and he doesn't want us to wake up to a body. I always knew my mum was going to be murdered one day. It was either me or my mum. I just knew that. I knew that from a very young age. Me and my mum were always sort of prepared for it to happen because we called for help and no one listened. My mum sort of prepared me from a very young age. She taught me how to cook, how to clean. She taught me how to basically manage money, and everything got to do with running a home. So she basically prepared me to be able to look after myself and my siblings if that day ever occurred. My dad's sister picked us up from the police station after about 12 hours, and then we stayed with her for 6 weeks until I became the main carer for my 6 younger siblings, and I have been looking after my siblings ever since. I'm now 25. I remember speaking to work colleagues about what's going on at home, and because no one knew what honour-based abuse was, there was no law or there was no sort of education on it. People thought it was just a normal thing that South Asian women go through or South Asian families go through because our parents are strict. But now that there's a label on it, I think it's going to help professionals like the police, social services, and even as adults when you're working in professional environments to be able to acknowledge that this is abuse. When I was deciding what I want to do with my future, I did consider being an advocate for women and to do a lot of charity work and even possibly set up my own charity. But then I realised that there are a lot of charities and there are a lot of women who advocate for women, but there are not enough survivors actually going out there and pursuing their dreams and actually creating this life that they've always wanted to do. So I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to pursue modelling and my career in fashion and go back to what I wanted to do as a child and still be able to use my pain as a purpose to show women that no matter how you grow up, what you've been through, what you've experienced, what you've witnessed, that you can still achieve your dreams and be the person that you've always wanted to be.